Hello everyone, I'm Callum and I run Repair Wins, as you may already know. Today I'm stood in my kitchen in front of my open microwave. It does actually work, but there's an issue with it. If I open the door, you can see down there, that's not dirt, it's rust. And it's rusted right next to the outside of the door, and it's also rusted here on the door itself. This microwave is at least 30 years old, possibly older. I picked it up secondhand for £8, and I've never been a fan of its ugly sort of dark green colour. But you can't deny that that number one, it's lasted, and number two, at least it has a colour, because every appliance you buy these days is just, black or grey. Pretty damn boring. Anyway then, it's with great sadness that I have to scrap this thing. As I said, it does work, but occasionally I get blue arcs coming from behind the mica filter all the way to the front of the door, because that's obviously, exposed metal, and naturally exposed metal and microwaves don't go very well together. You might think just sand it back and repaint it, but there's just simply no point, I'm afraid. And that, unfortunately, means it needs to be broken down. Although what I'm going to do is fully dismantle it. I'll talk you through what's inside the thing, and we'll see if any of the parts actually have any value, and we'll also be able to work out just how old this microwave actually is. So without any further ado, I'm going to use my electric screwdriver to take out the 5 screws that are holding the cover on. I need to make abundantly clear that microwaves are dangerous, although you already knew that. And that they contain a high voltage capacitor which is able to store enough current to basically to kill you instantly. So unless you know what you're doing, you really shouldn't be fiddling around inside one of these things. I want to know what exactly is going on inside the box that has heated up probably a couple 100 kilograms of food over the last few years. So I've taken the 5 screws out. Oh, there's a screw here that I've completely missed. Evidently I can't count. And it's the same with most microwaves. The theory is the cover just slides off. So let's see if theory is the same as practice. Obviously I don't want to jolt the table too hard because the camera will shake like mad. And naturally, these things aren't too willing to open because most of them have been sealed shut for God knows how long. But right, here we go. Ow! Just managed to pinch my arm. Not good. Right, there we go. What waits us inside? Ugh. Not a good sight. There you are, look, real, bona fide grease and fat, because obviously most people don't take the back off of the microwave to clean above the cavity. Anyway, inside this thing there's a level of quality that you just don't get anymore, and remember, this microwave was probably really cheap when it was new. So it's a Sharp microwave, and there's a Sharp branded magnetron inside. It doesn't tell me what year the microwave was built, but it's nice to see that Sharp actually built the parts that went in this thing. You can see just beside the magnetron we've got this little board here. It has a fuse on it, it's got a safety capacitor, or maybe that's for limiting inrush current. There's 2 safety capacitors there, and then we have some connectors attached to it. It wasn't willing, but I got there in the end, so that comes out, and then you can see this just lifts up over the back, and out of the unit it comes. Now, on most modern appliances you have a molded plug, but this one's old enough that it has a standard plug that I can just remove the middle screw, and then I can reuse this gammy, dirty thing somewhere else. I was right with my earlier guess, by the way, that this is to limit it's not quite to limit inrush current, it's to stop current being fed from the fan back onto the mains, because as you can see there's a fan here that spins, and these wires indirectly run into the fan. So as that fan's spinning, it generates current, and that current wants to go back out into your other devices, and this, in theory, stops that from happening. Chances are this board is completely worthless, but I'm going to take it out anyway. I mean, the end goal is to pretty much just have a steel shell that I can, throw in the recycling, and then obviously a bunch of PCBs, some of which I'll be able to sell, some of which will be recycled, and some of which will, be harvested for parts. This is one thing you'll see with a lot of appliances, by the way. On the back, it says made in UK, clear as day. And so let me show you the nice Welsh name on the side of the transformer. Dong Yang. Typically, when they say it was made in X country or Y country, they actually mean that they built the outside box in that country, and that most, if not all, of the internals were built abroad. I believe this part above is some sort of a thermal sensor. So if I just pinch the little tab and I can wiggle this and then free it up, I can say almost with certainty, by the way, that this part doesn't have any value. You see this little tab that I'm pinching on? The theory is I pinch down on it and it should be able to slowly work its way free. I'm going to leave the light bulb in place for now because it's not been designed to be removed. It's sort of been plastic welded in place, and so this assembly might be worth more with the light bulb holder captive. In a past video I built this capacitor drainer using some resistors from a desoldering station, and I've just used it to discharge the capacitor here, meaning I can now safely work on it. To be clear, the microwave has been off for a few days, so it's very unlikely there was any charge in there in the first place, but obviously you've got to be safe when it comes to an appliance like this. Before we can get to the capacitor, however, we need to remove some other parts, so I'm going to take the magnetron out. The magnetron is the component that generates the radio waves that heat your food, by the way. It's a very cool bit of engineering. I removed this metal bracket here. It was acting as a brace. It just ran from here to there, and the way that I took it out was obviously this screw was removed, and then I took a screw out of there and it just slid along to the left. I now want to remove the light bulb, but I can't because this piece of plastic is, sort of tethered in place. In order to gain access to it, I need to remove the door switches, but they're held in as well. So what I've decided to do is just remove what's easy and remove what's, clearly in front of me. So I can undo this with a little bit of patience. There we are. Changing tact slightly, I've loosened all the screws of the fan, and then the final one, which didn't really appear to be doing anything. I can remove these, put them there, and you can see the fan has fallen out, and then ideally, yeah, there you go, I can remove this piece of plastic. I think the fan at least was made locally. At the very least, Johnson is definitely the sort of name that I'm used to hearing. And it was actually quite easy to get this thing removed. Usually they're fairly sort of stuck in there, or it's quite contrived, the actual method for, removal. Now that I've removed the fan, we've got a much clearer view of the capacitor, and we should also be able to remove it. Anyway then, the capacitor works in conjunction with this massive transformer to supply the magnetron with power. So the transformer turns a 230 volts into whatever voltage it is the magnetron needs. It escapes my mind at the moment. And the capacitor makes sure that the current is stable, because if the current was fluctuating, then the magnetron wouldn't be able to work properly. Speaking of, I've realized that with some persistence and also a bit of pressure, I can sort of bend this thing into submission, get it to just about clear the magnetron, and that's another part out of this microwave. I've used pliers and a little bit of persuasion to disconnect these two cables from the magnetron. To be clear, I didn't put the pliers on and wrench, I just put it on and wiggled it sort of gently back and forth, and eventually it came free. I think it was just a slight bit of corrosion, and simply the fact that it's rather old is the reason why it didn't want to move. Speaking of old rubbish that I might not want to remove, I've taken the screw out that was here, the one that was holding the capacitor, and typically there's just sort of a little metal clamp that goes over the cap, and then with a bit of persuasion, as always, you can wiggle it free. When you boil it down, there's not actually a whole lot to these things. The next step anyway is just to take out the sort of cables going into one of the door switches, and you do just wiggle these back and forth, and eventually with a fairly loud pop, they'll come free. I've flipped the microwave onto its side now because it's time to take the transformer out. The transformer is obviously really heavy, and it makes, best sense to do it like this, because it might drop with a bit of a clang, but at least I'll be able to take it out fairly simply. So this screw is actually driven in at an angle at the factory. So I'm subtracting a point there. Look at that, that's not even subtle. And then maybe if you couldn't quite see it, you will want to remove this one. That's obviously a lot better. We'll do the third screw. And then evidently this is being held in by more than just the 4 screws, so I can take the 4th one out and it shouldn't really drop. There's definitely weight on that screw there. I've managed to free it up, I've got it on the table, and to get across just how heavy it is, let's put it on the scales, and I'll stand it so that the wire is on the scales as well. There you are, look at that, 4.1 kilograms. You could do 4 arm exercises with that. Progress is slow, but we are getting there. Get my hand under there so it doesn't slam, and then when the plastic is lifted, I can start freeing up this piece here, which is holding everything in place. Normally you wouldn't put a metal tool in plastic on plastic and twist, but like I say, this is all going in the recycling. This is just because I'm interested. If you're after a spring for a spare project, then there's a fairly strong one inside the door, and this piece is held in sort of like this. I need to get the other side back under so I can show you. So they're like that. This goes backwards and forwards, obviously. Although naturally, when it's actually inside the microwave, it's kind of limited, sort of in this range of motion. But when I pop it like this, you can see we've got a peg under here. There's a comparable peg on the other side. And they are what hold the thing in. I've unplugged the other two door switches, and the only cables that are left in the entire microwave that still need to be unplugged are all the way down there in the turntable motor. I've not seen this design for any other microwave, but it looks like if I take some screws out, I'll be able to remove the entire bottom cover. I've removed the 5 screws, so can I now just lift the bottom cover off? And it would appear that I can, maybe not as easily as I'd like to. No, I'll take that back. That was actually quite easy. I've just pulled the wiring harness, so there you are, you can see, in a whole microwave, that's the only wires you have. There's really not a lot. We're closing on the finish line here. I'm wondering though if I can remove the front panel. Check this out. There's obviously a bunch of other stuff holding it, but I took literally 1 screw out and... Brilliant, isn't it? You might be asking yourself why there are 3 door switches when obviously 1 switch would be fine to tell you whether the door's shut or not. The reason is these things are wired in such a way that if any one of them fails, the microwave will refuse to operate. Obviously, it wouldn't be good if a microwave was able to run with the door open. I don't really want something that looks like that firing out death beams at me. I don't know about you. The dials are quite simple to remove, by the way. The bigger one, I was literally able to just grab onto it and go yoink. As for the smaller one, I sort of worked a tool under, sort of bobbed up and down like this, moved it along, bobbed up and down. I kept doing that, and then eventually it broke free. Finally then, the part we've all been waiting for, the really cool illuminated timer module. So I spent many an evening staring at this thing in the dark, waiting for my food to cook. Just kidding, that would be a bit strange, but you can't help but look over at the thing while it's busy whirring away and you're doing other stuff and just sort of smiling to yourself. Never smile at that heap of crap. Anyway, we've got this thing here, so I can just open it up a little bit like a book. And obviously I need to be gentle because we've got God knows how many wires sandwiching it to here. But on the bottom, you can see there's a chip. And on that chip will be a date code. And that date code might be, you know, the missing link to determining how old this thing is. I've very slowly, very gently sort of bent this thing. And you can see in there, it's a Sharp branded microcontroller. And you can't really make it out in this light, but it says 851107. To be clear, I don't think that's a date code because it would make my microwave 41 years old. Unfortunately, I've ended up wiping some of it away. I went to give this thing a very quick clean just to make it easier to handle as I'm disposing of it. And that used to say C, shift, May, and I believe it said 1999. In fact, I can say that almost with certainty. It couldn't possibly be 1989, given that's from 1991 and so on. So evidently these are just a part that they made God knows how many of. They sit in a warehouse. A microwave motor isn't exactly something unique, is it? So unfortunately I can't show you the exact date, but it said May 1999. At least I'm pretty sure that it did. Which means that this microwave is just over 27 years old. I don't know how much the previous owner used it, but I got plenty of use out of it. And I think that for the £8 I paid second hand, you know, it's more than sort of done what it needed to do for me. Now that the microwave is being scrapped, it would be a good time to talk about the parts and what's going to happen to them. So, as you'll see in a moment, the turntable, door switches, magnetron, capacitor and turntable motor have all been listed for sale. And then the other bits, the fan, the transformer, the wires and the housing have all been recycled. Finally then, we just have the power input PCB, the light bulb and the diode. They're all worthless and they've been scrapped as well. Anything that I've not mentioned went on the scrap heap too. As for the front panel with its LEDs, I've pretty much held on to those because I want to use them for a future video. What about the parts then? The simple thing would be for me to just open up eBay and show you, but on the 8th of July I got rid of my home internet, as is evidenced by this little thing here. I'll talk about that in a future video, but you can see from all these screenshots that I've taken, I listed the capacitor for £20, I've listed the magnetron, and this one is a bit hopeful, for £90, and that might seem like a complete rip-off, but well, number one, obviously, you don't have to buy it. But number two, someone sold 5 of these for £115 new, so £90 represents a decent discount. It's obviously a used part, but it is under warranty, and it's also clean and it's in good condition. Then we've got the door switches. So I've listed this one on its own for £10 because it's worth a little bit more than the other two, which are basically worth £10 as a combo. Out of everything, it's not really worth your time to, you know, package items like these up and send them out, but they're one of the few things that might actually sell. Then we've got the turntable, that's listed for £14. Someone sold 184 of these things new for £16, so I've not offered much of a discount there, but remember, it's literally a piece of glass, you know, there's no difference whether it's new or used. And then finally we have the motor for the turntable. These things are compatible with like a billion different models of microwave, but there aren't that many listed with my specific part number, so I've decided to list it for $19. If it doesn't sell, I'll drop it down to $12.99 or something, maybe in a month's time, and I suppose we'll go from there. Now, it's obviously not worth your time to buy a faulty microwave or even to pick one up that you've found just to take it apart and sell the bits, but I obviously already had the microwave. It's a really good way to learn how things go together is by taking them apart, and furthermore I did the same thing to my washing machine when that broke down, and I ended up making like £170 after fees and postage, which pretty much paid for the new washing machine. So, you know, if you've got the time to spare, or if you're technically inclined, or maybe you just, you know, this is an interest of yours, then it might be worth doing. Otherwise, probably not. That concludes another video. I've got to say I'm quite pleased with how this has all come together. I obviously have a new microwave. Ugh, God, one shudders at the words. Only joking, it's a microwave that was probably a few months old. I found it downstairs. Turns out there was nothing wrong with it, no rust, no nothing, no idea why it was thrown away. All I had to do was give it a good clean, and again, I don't mind getting my hands dirty, just put some gloves on and clean the thing and stop your moaning. And obviously that microwave works fine, so that's the reason why I chose to scrap this one, because I probably would have just let it keep injecting blue beams into my food otherwise. In all seriousness though, there's a lot of useful parts still left over in the thing. It was nice to take it apart, sort of to see how they go together, and ideally to make what might be a useful video to some people. And then furthermore, if any of the parts actually sell, then I'll have received a tiny little bit of cash in my back pocket for all of this effort. As for YouTube, to be honest, I've kind of neglected the channel for the last sort of month. That wasn't a voluntary change, but I mean, my life has genuinely never been busier. I'm out at the moment socialising more, sort of enjoying the nice weather, and naturally, as I've already said, these videos don't pay, so obviously I have bills that need to be paid, you know, rent, going out, doing all of these other things, and so of course I spend all my time at the non-profit, and then I do the odd repair jobs for my own business as well. So, you know, sometimes you can't always upload as often as you want to. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'm not in the business of just churning out rubbish just for the sake of saying I uploaded once a week, because no one wants to watch something that's been haphazardly thrown together. You know, I could solder a little LED and a switch to this battery and then make it a 12-minute video and pretend it was useful, but it wasn't. And also, there's kind of not really had much inspiration recently, but I've got loads of different projects on the shelf behind me and loads of other things at the non-profit that are needing repair. So I'm hoping to get back into a schedule of uploading once a week, though we will have to see. If it ends up being once a fortnight for the foreseeable future, then that's fine by me as well, because it means that I'll be able to focus and put some really good stuff out. I ended up having to scrap 2 videos in a row after putting quite a lot of effort into them. One of them was a PC I dug out of a skip, and the reason being the motherboard ended up corroding to a point where it wasn't repairable because I was lazy and I didn't bother just fixing the corrosion when it was still fixable, and then the power supply ended up being not repairable. I ended up buying an exact match replacement power supply just to swap parts over and practice. So again, really good for my personal development, you know, that CPD, that rubbish that they're always telling us to do, but at the same time, it's not really I fixed a PC from a skip. If I swap the motherboard and I swap the power supply, now is it. As for the second video, I can't actually remember what that one was, but again, I put quite a bit of effort into it, so it's a bit sort of I don't know the word, but it just sort of slows you down and you think, man, I've put all this time and all this effort in, and you know, it's ended up being a bust. And not really busts where it's worth uploading the videos either, so what can you do? We've got a good video here, I think, and there's a lot of cool stuff, I think, coming in the pipeline. Anyway then, if you enjoyed what you watched, feel free to leave it a like. Even better if you hit subscribe. Obviously, the more people that are subscribed and the more likes the channel gets. We hear this all the time, but YouTube recommends it to more people, more views. gets pushed further, repair message spreads further, more people fix their own devices. You know, it's really important we exercise our right to repair, because with every passing day devices get tougher to fix and these companies get more and more brazen. So pick up the tools now, learn to sharpen your repair skills, and eventually, when enough people are demanding that devices be repairable, they won't have a choice but to sell us stuff that can actually be fixed by the end user. That's the plan anyway. Either way though, that's all I've got for today, so I will sign off now. I'm going to take a break. It's been a very long, it's not been a long day, it's been a long few weeks, so I'm going to take a break. I will see you later. Take care for now, and goodbye.